Thank you very much. So I understand I'm the last speaker, so you're all a bit sleepy and tired, but I'll be quick, I'll be short. Before I go on to the actual topic, I'm just going to briefly talk about myself. Well, if you could ask me 5 years ago if I would have any relation with technologies, I would probably say, why? Or no, because in my family, no one actually offered me to become an engineer or to take a career path that would in any way be connected to technologies. Even though I wasn't too bad in math, like there was this perception that I would be better in social sciences. So I was like, okay. And I had a sister and a brother who were better than me in math, so they became economists, and I got involved in social sciences. And I started first year as a sociologist student, and I immediately fell in love with this field because I'm a bit social science nerd in terms of I love to read different kind of research, and if you can't prove it by research, then you can really make a statement. And it is very cool to find out what is actually all about this people that we have around, or about the choices we make, and you can really research every kind of topic you would like to know more about. So I was all into the social sciences when I started working at the Ministry of Economy in Georgia, Department of ICT and Innovations. I was just a consultant, first year student at the university. It was somewhat like not a full-time job, but what I was doing there, I just had to communicate with international companies, like just to write letters and be more like a clerk. But then one day my supervisor said, we just really want to do something about local developers to support their profession in Georgia. And I said, okay, I really want to do something really cool. Like I was 18 or 19, and I was like, yeah, I would do it. But then I came out of the room, I was like, who are developers? Like, how do I do it? And there was no tech community in Georgia at the time. There was no culture of having hackathons or TED Talks. There was no virtual or offline place of gathering for people interested in tech, whether they were advanced users or developers. So we started actually going door to door to different companies. And if you know Georgia, you should know that we don't have luxury of having office of Google or big office of Microsoft. It's kind of like a bit forgotten by big companies. So you have to try yourself to bring them to Georgia and to try to kind of have the Georgians the same pace as the other countries have. So luckily Google had an initiative which was called at that time Google Technology User Group, and we started to set it up. Of course, it was very hard. I was having a team member who was a student of software engineering. So we just started this it was a crazy experience, but I could really see results now. So we started this, what is called now Nanitashvili, then we have Women Tech Makers community, and it is honestly very strange for me to be here as a guest, because if I were in Georgia now, I would be the main organizer. And like when I arrived in the meeting, I saw a t-shirt, I was like, yeah, I should put it on, because that's how you do when you're on a GDG event in Georgia, and because this is something that makes us feel the power of this community and the power of being enthusiastic and volunteer for this cause. But what I want to say is that a long time ago, I thought that social science is so different from technologies, and it's something that is completely not correlated with each other. But then after I started this community, after we saw a lot of developments, you realize the power of technologies, and you believe that, in today's world, you cannot do anything without technologies. And rather, they give you a lot of opportunities to actually make some changes and develop tools that help people, or just, make your voice heard. So I joined an NGO where we started to use different social mapping systems to assist people in need in 15 countries. And last year we made a project where we tried to connect young people in the conflict divides in our region by computer gaming. And it was the very cool approach, as of physically we cannot travel, we cannot see each other, and moreover, we don't even speak the same language or same foreign language. So if we were even put in one room, we would have just been like mute, because we cannot communicate. But with enabling automatic translation plugin in Minecraft, these kids could communicate just like they were from the same exact community. And this was the great thing. It was very emotional for me as well, because when I was born, this war happened at the time, so I was also unable to meet anyone from the other side. And now we're doing a project where we try to educate young people in the regions of Georgia, because access of the information about this profession is quite low, and we try to bring more light to the regions. And we're about to start a new project, again with peace building, while we want to use some more virtual reality of bringing together this detached communities. So it's kind of like the technologies really enable you to do magical things. And right now, just more talk about women, because when I was a sociologist student and it was time for me to work on a thesis paper, like big research paper, all of my friends were working on some issues about I don't know, some families, or how Georgians are with religion. And I said, I want to do about women and technologies. And my professors were like, what topic is that? Because it's nothing in Georgia. I don't know, it was not really important thing. But at the time, we already had women tech makers, so I thought it would have been a really cool opportunity for me to actually dive into this and really find out what are the actual reasons why women are not there, or why they are there. When we talk about bringing women to tech, or why they're not there, we often take like a small picture and not the huge picture. And sometimes we just think of very small factors, while there are a lot of different social, cultural, personal things that determine why women go there or why they don't go there. So I started reading a lot of different research papers, and there were not many in Georgia, but I tried to add on it and do my own as well. But I would like to discuss with you the small model of what determines a career path in technologies. But before we move on, I just want us to ask ourselves questions. Why do we talk about women in technologies? Why do we want to bring them here? Is this like competition between men and women? It's not, right? It's not about numbers or percentages of like what is the division of labor market between female and male. There are some professions where females are dominant, so why don't we step up and say that let's bring more males to this field? But the idea, and I guess you will also ask this question to yourself and try to answer it, is that we want women in technologies, just aside of the statistics of how many is involved or something, because this is a very cool profession, and this is something that is modern, that is tomorrow's, and the previous speaker described it really well, why it's a cool profession, and we just want women to be part of this cool thing. It's not just about percentage and we want to raise it up, and maybe it's already enough, as you mentioned, maybe we already have that quota. And you know, on the external side, if you look, the market demand on having more software engineers is growing. Like in Georgia, for instance, I hear every company saying, I can't find enough personnel to do the startup with me, or I cannot find this and this profession because it's a profession of of yesterday. It wasn't there 50 years ago. I'm talking about IT. So you know, there's a huge market demand, and then there are only a small portion of the population involved. So that's why we want more women there, so that there are more professionals in terms of external factors, like market will feel more released, it will be more proactive, more startups will be there because the labor force will be more. And in personal point of view, women will be involved in very cool professions that is very creative, highly paid, and just makes them feel really creative and satisfied. So there is this interesting model of theory of planned behavior by Asen that helps you to put different contexts and different questions together. And this is one of the ways of explaining what brings women to tech and what brings anyone to tech. So in this thing, in the theory of planned behavior, of how people behave, there are three major pillars. And one of them is behavior rules. And the first component of it is self-efficiency. So how does the person feel that this is something he or she can do? Like, do they feel confident in this matter? And this is something that females often lack in this field, as if they don't have much exposure or much experience. And this all happens with the confidence, because when you're confident in your work, you feel satisfied, you feel happy, and that makes you stay there and makes you do even more and more. Another is how your individual interests and the scope of the work correlate. So how do you like the job actually? Like what it is has to do about anything, what is communication is there, what is the output of this profession, so that if you feel like, oh, this is something I would like to do, then there is this match, and this is one of the factors that determines whether you go to this career or not. And one of the most influential in this is a image that society has about professions, and this is something that we always talk about in Women Tech Makers, right? And this image, like, it's not abstract. We make this image. Society itself brings this traits together and makes an image of who is software engineer and who is IT professional. So if you want to tackle this behavior rules, we have to, provide some treatment to each one of them. So raise confidence of women. Just make sure that they really understand what it takes, and I'll have another slide about mismatch of what young girls think about this profession, what the women actually in the profession think about this, and the most importantly about the image that is there. Another is the pillar is social beliefs, and here the big part is the reference group, which are the people around us, so very close people, our siblings, our parents, our family members, and role models. So how these people perceive our careers that we want to take is a huge determinant of if we're going to take it or not. And of course, for instance, in Georgia case, we're more a collectivist society, so we really care about what people think about us, and we don't want to do something that is against of what everyone is thinking. So for instance, if everyone thinks that, tech is not career for a girl, you just, distance yourself, and it's not that someone is telling you, you don't come here, but you just say, no, it's not for me because my mom thinks like that, or my neighbor thinks like that, or I don't see anyone who is doing it because there are no role models doing it. So you just, even in the early stage, just don't think about it. Don't even consider this as as an option, and that's the problem, not considering it as an option. And the last one is the factors, the actual factors that then come, end up being behavioral control, what they call. And in our case, it's about having access to computers, because a lot of times not having access to computers is a cause of not really knowing this profession, right? Not really knowing what it takes to be around and play with computer. And having ownership of the computer is even more important. And this is why, for instance, when we do community events, we have to make sure that maybe these girls don't have access to computers at home, so they don't have experience of computers. So why don't we give them access at our community events? So that's where they kind of get more confidence. Because research shows that having experience in computers result in having more confidence, and having more confidence in computers results in getting the career person in this field, because that way they're confident, they don't care about this image, or they don't care about their parents' perceptions. They know this is something they really would like to do, and they know they can do it. So actually making them sure that they can do it is very important. And for instance, now when we're doing this classes in the regions of Georgia, we try to just make sure that they could do something, they could actually see it. So for instance, several weeks ago I went to one of the small village, and we had a very small JavaScript workshop, and like they had to animate their name basically, and they got crazy, like, how come I can really write my name and I can make it have shapes of like bubbles, or I can just change their colors. Like this thing that they can actually see the output right away is something that really, you know, builds them up, and for them to realize that, you know, that's not really hard. Like, I'm just on the other side of the computer and I can actually do it too. Like, I can share it with my friends, I show it to my mom, they will be proud. So actually, you know, introducing to them something that they can actually see results is very important, because for instance, if you start teaching them like a long series, or just like really on a paper, they will never understand what is the coolness about, you know, writing something and then getting a cool output on the end. So another research shows that during the early years, girls are actually interested in this field. Like if you ask young girls, they'll say, yeah, that's cool, that's very interesting. But what happens is that they just lose interest afterwards. Or what happens is that if you see them interested, then and you then, you know, check the enrollment rates, the girls disappear. They're not here anymore. So something happens in the early stages that makes them not go there. So that's where we want to look in, because just doing events, of course, it's great, but we have to look at, you know, what didn't bring them here, because we know women who are already here. But if we want to increase the number, we have to go back, and start with a very young age. So, for instance, I'll show you Georgian case, and this is exam results of girls and boys, and as you can see, they perform at the same rate or even higher than boys. Well, if you ask the same teachers who taught these kids, teachers will say, oh no, girls are not that good, boys are better. And this is also a problem, because it's not just girls have this perception, but it's also that, you know, teachers have these perceptions, and teachers at the early stage are very influential for young people, and they are the ones they look after too. And you know, it's not like there was one very nice research that you know, they asked girls and boys how much they got praise from teachers, and then you could look at their results, and you know, lower number of girls said that, you know, teacher tells me I'm good at math, or teacher tells me I'm good at physics. Well, if you would put the scores, they were actually performing way much better. So thing is that we actually need to work with teachers, because this is something very important. They have huge impact on young people, and you know, these teachers don't even realize they have such power of, you know, ruining your dreams of getting into this career. So that's an event idea for you to go and talk to teachers. Another aspect that we already mentioned is about parents. This is also a Georgian case, that only 59.2% of parents agree that girls and boys have the same capabilities in this field, while 95% of the school students say that their parents' you know, perceptions, ideas are very influential for them. So if they don't have encouraging parents, there are very low chances that they will defeat all these things and still go to this career. Another thing, it's a problem of information. This is a Georgian case. I don't know what is the statistics in Austria. But the problem is that there is no information or unreliable information to expose to young people about IT professions or about STEM in general. And in terms of unreliable, this bad stereotypes is unreliable information, or bad understanding of the scope of work is something even worse than having no information. So to put them together, social influences that we have described and low access to computers, so low access to information, are the main determinants of why girls don't go to IT professions. And this is not only about girls, it would be the same for boys as well, because this is something that makes you be who you are. So this is one research that they asked school kids what they thought that, IT professions were like. And you can see their answers on the whites part, but you can see answers of the females were actually in the field on the green part. So you can see it's completely mismatched. So for instance, young girls think it's very boring, you're sitting with computers all the time, it's not creative, while the people who are in there think this is the most creative profession of all times. And they have their social lives, they're hiking, they're doing theater club, and the kids think it's very boring, they don't have social lives, they're not communicating. So this is unreliable information. And if we don't explain to the kids what it really is, because for instance in Georgia there is this common thing that if you're IT, you just reinstall Windows and that's your job. And if you're like really programmer, they would bring their laptop to you like, here, can you install like Photoshop on my computer? And you're like, so, but this is what they think, and of course for a young person it might sound, really fascinating to install Photoshop on everyone's computer their whole life. So they don't even know. So when we say, why are not they there? We didn't even tell them what it was to come there. So that's a problem, and that's really cool that, for instance, at Women Tech Makers event, you just had a kids workshop because, they would have some messages to take away and they would think it's not that boring, it is not that uncreative, and it's actually the other way around. So if we would look at this green part, we would say that if they're there, they would actually fall in love with it. So it just takes them to get there and they would fall in love with it. But of course let's take a picture. But of course, it's not that, in a fairy tale and pink eyeglasses. Some young girls get into the departments of IT in the universities, but not all of them continue to work in those fields. Because there are some, again, negative influences from professors. For instance, male professors, and sometimes I did a small research. I talked with I did narrative interviews with the Georgian girls who are in this profession, and it was quite a deep interview from their childhood till now, what has influenced their choices and why is they here, or them sharing information of what happened to their friends who are not there anymore. And a lot of girls have mentioned that in the universities, first of all, the room was dominated with the guys. And professors were dominated with guys too, so they didn't have like female professors to have see as role models. And sometimes their professors would think like, oh, you don't have to write this homework, just take it easy, because you're a girl. They were taking their softs in a soft way, like, oh, I'm just gonna give you a grade anyway. And these girls were like, wait, I actually want to write this code, let me do my homework. And for some girls, having this kind of negative stereotypes even within the class was even giving the motivation to prove that they're really cool. So for these girls, they finally ended up being in real good positions, but there were some who just couldn't take that anymore. So after just getting a diploma, they put it in a wardrobe and they went to work somewhere in a completely different area. And there are a lot of different stereotypes. There is a problem at the workplace, right? Because if the employers don't understand why you should have diversity, if they don't understand value of having this diversity, then it's hard to talk about this. And there was another research in Georgia where more than 70% of Georgian companies operating in IT didn't see any value of encouraging more women participation. So this is a problem because, okay, we tell to these kids, they finally get to the university, okay, we bring female professors and we make sure professors are not mean and they are not stereotypical. And then they go to the employers and, again, there is a problem. We still couldn't manage to do it because employers are like, nah, I don't really care if we have 5 women or 1 woman or just none of them. And another thing is how they support their their female employers, and we have talked about having a kid or being pregnant, how they handle these situations. Like, do they really encourage you and help you to have your life apart from being their employee or not? Let's move on. And yeah, what I wanted to mention, these negative stereotypes are not only from males, and in many cases they are from females as well, because females think this is the right thing to do, and it's even more influential because they come from the same circle, right? And for instance, there have been cases where male professors have been really instrumental for this girl to go to this profession, while there have been cases that these females were really discouraging and telling them like, oh no, don't come to this career because it's horrible. I have been in a bad time, so you don't do that. So of course this person would say, okay, I'm just gonna go and become a psychologist or something. Like I did. Yeah, so this is a problem. So how do we bring them and keep them? So it's not about bringing them, but actually keeping them there, making them interested and make them really proactive and productive in this field. Because it's like, we're not talking about numbers, yeah? So this and this many women got enrolled in the university. We actually want to see the diverse workplace, and it's just not like we're not a government to talk with numbers. But before we go on to giving some more ideas, more thoughts, I just want to do a little plot twist in all of this topic, because we now at this launch of women tech makers, and every other company is doing this as well. Like, they're supporting girls and women into STEM and into coding. We're saying that this is some new profession we need to introduce to girls, because they don't consider this as a new profession and as their own profession. But if we look back in 20th century, we can see that the women were quite well involved in the engineering. And we know Ada, we know Margaret, who wrote the code, like this much code, exactly this much code, to make Apollo go to the moon. I mean, they were there. They didn't have any stereotypes, right? Like, why are we saying that this is something new? And if you look at the enrollment rates in universities way back then, or participation ratio at workplaces in the companies, you can see that the number of females were quite growing. And you can see that it was in 1984, it was 37, and in 2011 it fell to 12. So we kind of messed up right there. So it's not like, oh, it's just like trying to push this women and something new, but it was like, now it's our dream to go to the 37, just to go back this many years. So why do we have this situation? This is a very interesting research finding, and this is why I love social sciences, that you actually get to see the causes, and it's not just talking blah blah that female do that, but you actually get to, prove it right and to try to get into the roots. Because if we just organize events, it's just, tackling the iceberg on the surface, but you have to go deep down to make sure it doesn't come up again, and to make sure it really makes a difference. So, as I said, in 1984, mankind did something very wrong that made these women stop coding. And this is something, it's not like we want to bring them, they just stopped coding. They were there, and then something happened. So what happened? Let's just look at the history. So in early 1980s, it was a time where the first personal computer was introduced, because there was no personal computer before, and these ladies were working at their workplaces with these big machines. So when it was introduced, it was perceived as a toy for boys, because it didn't have much of functionality at that time, and it was just, I'm just going to get this for my boy. So they would just buy it. It was the time when the TV series enrolled, and it showcased male as a dominant in the field. So that was something that was exceptional. And if you look at enrollment rates in 1985, by the time when boys already had computers but girls didn't have it, the enrollment rate dropped at that same year and continued dropping backwards and going really, really low at 12% in 2011. And it's not a problem of 1984, even now. There is a wonderful research that just asked households if they had a both girl and boy. When you bought a computer, where did you put it? And they said, you know, in my boys' room. And it was something like, then I saw it, like, oh my God, my brother also had that in his room. And I was like, that's why I went to social sciences and didn't go to coding. But that's something like, you know, a parent wouldn't say like, oh, if I put this computer in my boys' room, it will harm my girl's future career. It's something, you know, very naive move that the parents did, but it's still it still made a difference. And then if you look at computer informatics classes in the schools, if there are not enough computers, so for instance there are 5 computers, you have 10 kids coming in, what happens is that boys sit first and they're like hosts, and you know, girls are already don't really, you know, caring about sitting there, and they ask their male friends, like their buddies, to do their homework for them because they know it. They are sitting there first and they're the king. And very interesting finding that was done in Georgia was that they tried to study textbooks of STEM, like mathematics, biology, chemistry, physics, and just to look at illustrations and also about the exercises. So with the illustrations, you could see that 77% of illustrations, like someone doing something, was guy, and like 15% was both of them, and in only 8% it was a female illustrated on the textbook. So if someone who, you know, produces textbook probably didn't think of this would have a huge impact on a girl who is sitting there and learning this class, because this is what we call the latent factors. So factors that are not so evident, explicit, but they actually have a huge influence way down in mind that you never find out why it happened. And of course, it's not about illustrations. Of course, illustrations are more evident. They have more power to you know, get stuck in the mind. But also, like, for instance, I even remember from my math classes, it was like exercise. So mom has to cook a cake and she needs like 2 eggs, 1 kilo of flour. But then dad was the one fixing his car and he needed this. Or dad or guy, like John, was the one who had to drive from A to B and how much time he would spend to get the speed. But the girl was always doing some baking cake or like doing something, but cleaning house. But that's actually, you know, people wrote it because that's how it was in their cultures. They wrote these textbooks, but it is changing, right? So we have to change textbooks as well. You cannot really stay with the same idea of having this illustrations there. So I guess the biggest takeaway from this is that we need to bring girls back, and not we need to just start, you know, taking this career to them, and you know, understanding, going deep into what happened in 1984, what we did wrong, what the mankind did that they ruined this profession for women, is what then gives us answers to all of our questions of how we bring them and how we make them stay, how we do our events, you know, how do we promote, why do we start with the small kids, why do we have to work with parents and teachers, why have to make sure that the employers are really doing their job, and these are just for us to think. And I just want to add a very small thing about role models. That exposure is really important, because when you're exposed to something, you actually believe it. And this is not only about career, it's just about everything, right? In Georgia, we have a saying that it's better to see once than to hear 100 times. And you know, it works, it's effective to see it. And the most important when you expose role models is that you should expose role models that are, you know, local, like from their community, from their school. Because, for instance, in Georgia, I could talk about, you know, Ada Lovelace or some American young kid who made like a research and, you know, she got this award, or someone in, you know, far away in Australia maybe. But it wouldn't make that much impact on a Georgian girl. But if I said someone from the same school of hers did this and this, then it would make the difference, because then she would think it is possible in the same context, because otherwise she would think that, you know, in America or in somewhere else, they have different culture, they have different economic situation, or, you know, people have different perceptions, or the studies are different. But when you show them exactly, people come from the exactly same background, this is where the change happens in their minds. So as the women tech makers, people who are here, I think it's our biggest goal to become role models within our communities, because that's where we have the most influence. Because we might not be role models for someone way back or far away, but we have really power to be role models for people within our communities. And about the teachers, for instance, I figured out that in Georgia, every year, teachers all around the country get together. It's called ICT for Education Conference, where they just come and they see different expos. They get some tips on how to use Google Classroom or something. So I started going to their conferences and to speaking them about STEM and girls, and how they have to make sure that girls are also involved in their classes. And for instance, when I told them this is a statistic that in informatics class boys sit at the computers, like I heard like, oh yes, that's actually in my class, what happens? And because that was true. And you know, they had no idea this was a problem. They had no idea they had so much influence. And they really agreed, and they said, oh yes, I had the same idea that boys are performing better. But after seeing these results, which they were never interested to see, they said, yeah, I mean, we have to actually work on it. So it takes a lot of different layers, and it's not only just our tech community like us to hold events, but it's actually we have to go out from our circles, because people who come on our events are one target group, but then there is a huge pile of target groups we have to work with, including media, because as we saw in 1984, it was one of the factors that determined that these computers were for guys. And even in media to showcase in movies, in TV series to showcase more girls in this field would actually help somewhere in the very young ages and get stuck in their minds, like this bad illustrations get stuck in their minds. So that's about it. I hope you learned something new and you are not very bored of the presentation. And thank you very much for listening, and we can have some discussion or questions. Thank you.